Thank you for joining Wars of the Rosies. And this is Alchemy from the Encyclopedia of Freemasonry by Albert G. Mackey. Alchemy. The Neoplatonians introduced at an early period of the Christian era an apparently new science which they called thus, or the sacred science, which materially influenced the subsequent condition of the arts and sciences. The books from which the sacred science was taught were called Chema, supposed to be derived from Cam, the son of Noah, to whom was attributed its invention. In the 5th century arose as the name of the science Alchemica, derived from the Arabic definite article, al, being added to chemica. And Julius Firmicius, in a work on the influence of the stars upon the fate of man, used the phrase Scientia Alchemica. From this time, the study of alchemy was openly followed. In the Middle Ages and up to the end of the 17th century, it was an important science, studied by some of the most distinguished philosophers, such as Avicenna, Albertus Magnus, Raymond Lully, Roger Bacon, Elias Ashmole, and many others. Alchemy, called also the Hermetic philosophy, because it is said to have been first taught in Egypt by Hermes Trismegistus, was engaged in 3 distinct pursuits. 1. The discovery of the philosopher's stone, by which all the inferior metals could be transmuted into gold. 2. The discovery of an alkahest, or universal solvent of all things. 3. The discovery of a panacea or universal remedy, under the name of elixir vitae, by which all diseases were to be cured and life indefinitely prolonged. It is not surprising that alchemy, putting forth such pretensions as these, should, by those who did not understand its true nature, have been flippantly defined as thus: an art without an art, whose being is falsehood, its middle labor, and its end beggary. But while there were undoubtedly many fools who understood the language of alchemy only in its literal sense, and many charlatans who used it for selfish purposes, it cannot be denied that there must have been something better in it than mere pretension to invite the attention and engage the labors of so many learned men. Hitchcock, a learned American writer who published in 1857, remarks upon alchemy and the alchemists, says that the genuine alchemists were religious men who passed their time in leisure pursuits, earning an honest subsistence, and in religious contemplations, studying how to realize in themselves the union of the divine and human nature expressed in man by an enlightened submission to God's will. And they thought out and published, after a manner of their own, a method of attaining or entertaining upon this state as the only rest of the soul. And in another place, he says, the subject of alchemy was man, while the object was the perfection of man, which was supposed to center in a certain unity with the divine nature. The alchemists were, in their philosophy, undoubtedly in advance of their age, and, being unwilling to make their opinions openly known to the world, not yet prepared to receive and to appreciate them, they communicated their thoughts to each other in a language and in symbols understood only by themselves. Thus they spoke of man as a stone, and the fire which purified the stone was the series of trials and temptations by which man's mortal nature is to be purified. So too, sulfur, mercury, salt, and many other things were symbols by which they taught lessons of profound religious import to the true adepts, which, being misunderstood by others, led thousands into the vain and useless search for tangible methods of transmuting the baser metals into gold. Who, says one of these philosophers, is to blame, the art or those who seek it upon false principles? Freemasonry and alchemy have sought the same results, that being the lesson of divine truth and the doctrine of immortal life, and they have both sought it by the same method of symbolism. It is not, therefore, strange that in the 18th century, and perhaps before, we find an incorporation of much of the science of alchemy into that of Freemasonry. Hermetic rites and Hermetic degrees were common, and the relics are still to be found existing in degrees which do not absolutely trace their origin to alchemy. but would show some of the traces in the ritual. The 28th degree of the Scottish Rite, or the Knight of the Sun, is entirely a Hermetic degree and claims its parentage in the title of Adept of Masonry, by which it is sometimes known. Thank you for watching, and please don't forget to share, like, subscribe, and comment. And if you can, please consider donating to Wars of the Rosies. Links to PayPal and Patreon are in the description. Thank you so very much.